Hola, comrades! Today's topic of interest, Super Paper Mario. While the Thousand Year Door might be the best entry in the Paper Mario series, Super Paper Mario has the best story. At its heart, it is a twisted but tender love story. A young member of the Tribe of Darkness, Lord Blumiere, fell in love with a human woman, the Lady Timpani. When his father banished the young woman and wiped her memory, Blumiere grew mad and destroyed his entire tribe before seeking to do the same to other worlds as the evil Count Bleck. Following a Book of Dark prophecy, he forcibly marries Peaks to Bowser to give rise to the Chaos Heart, which opens a great interdimensional dark void that will destroy all existence. He is a bitter nihilist, but when he realizes that his lost love is still alive, having been traveling with Mario as a pixel named Tippy, he starts considering that he has made a grave mistake. He knows he cannot stop the void, but he latently hopes that Mario will defeat him. When Mario does, the world appears to be saved, but Dimencio emerges from the shadows and uses the power of the Chaos Heart for his own vile schemes. Dimencio, the Jester, is the true villain of the game. Unlike Bleck, he has no redeeming qualities or tragic backstory. He is clever and creative, but he is also a megalomaniac. Unlike the Joker, who sees himself as a force of nature tearing down world order, Dimencio wants to destroy all existing worlds in order to build a new world in his image. He is much like Cyrus in Pokémon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, but even Cyrus is more sympathetic. While far from the most understandable or interesting antagonist in a Pokémon game, Cyrus at least has a clear reason for doing what he is doing, that being that he has been embittered by the suffering of the world. Dimencio, despite his humorous asides, is not that interesting. This archetype can be done well, as seen with the Joker and Kefka Palazzo in Final Fantasy VI, but it is not done well here. However, this is not a weakness of the game. Please don't misunderstand me. Dimencio does not have to be a complex or even an interesting character. The revelation of his true nature contrasts well with the revelation of Bleck's redeeming qualities. While the game states that what Bleck did was deleterious and ignominious, it draws a line between his plaintive despair and Dimencio's gleeful avarice and arrogance. On one side, there is a being whose dark exterior is contrasted with his inner love for Timpani, which is genuine and passionate. On the other side, there is a being whose playful and charming exterior is contrasted with his rancid and morally bankrupt core. Blumiere solidifies his redemption by marrying Tippy, thereby empowering the pure hearts that Mario and comrades have collected throughout their travels and allowing Dimencio to be defeated. That he is willing to sacrifice his life to stop the void proves further how deeply the reappearance of Tippy changes him. That is, strangely for the Mario series, an incredibly thoughtfully written and compelling story. It does not quite match the heights of the greatest gaming stories ever told, but it comes rather close. It's a grandiose story that is tragic and mournful and aching in an old-fashioned but endlessly evocative way. Amidst the wackiness that courses through the blood of Paper Mario, including this game, such a disquieting story seems out of place. Blumiere is, despite the fantasy world of prophecies and magic in which he lives, reminiscent of a typical protagonist of a 19th century romantic, that's capital R, novel. He's this force of nature, this bearer of turmoil and angst. His actions may be selfish, but his motivations are sincere and earnest. He aches for his lost love and longs to turn back time. How can this coexist in a world where Mario can breathe in space by wearing a fish bowl on his head? The answer, surprisingly, is quite well. Like Pokémon Sun and Moon after it, Super Paper Mario recognizes that a great story can be told despite a flat and boring player character by making the player character peripheral to the main narrative. Sun and Moon isn't your story, it's Lily's. Similarly, Super Paper Mario is not your story, it's Tippy and Bleck's. The structure of the game reflects this. It is about the juxtaposition between light and darkness, and about how they can be found within one another. While the series' trademark humor is essential to the gameplay experience, it is as auxiliary as Mario is to the heart of the narrative. Without the humor, the game would not be as compelling. Just like without Mario and his comrades, the world would not be saved. But the state of the world is not funny, it's bleak. The entire 6th world you visit is consumed completely by the void. There's nothing left, it's only white space. You have to progress through this white space for minutes before you finally reach the next plot point. It is one of the most sobering and grim experiences I've ever played through. In a game series known for much brightness and color and comedy, it is especially jarring. This is one of the major strengths of the game. It is impressively zany, but that zaniness has darker undertones, that you must, in this action RPG, fight a major boss like you're in a classic turn-based two-dimensional RPG from the 90s is hilarious. But that this boss is an impressive three-headed chain chomp that is guarding the exit to the underworld is a sharp juxtaposition. Likewise, the fact that the final boss of Chapter 3 is an otaku chameleon is hilarious, but there's real darkness in his obsession to control anything and everything he desires. Super Paper Mario asserts that darkness does not always exist in the absence of comedy, but rather, it can often exist alongside comedy, and is amplified by that comedy. The character of Mimi begins as rather comical and silly, but that lightheartedness turns to horror when you are forced to become her indentured servant. Then, after you escape, she reveals her true form as a massive spider and chases you through the mansion. The comedy is stripped away by the last chapter of the game, which takes place in Bleck's castle. The full extent of the darkness that has emanated from the heart of the game is revealed. It reminds me of the hauntingly sepulchral Eternal City chapter in Kex 22, in that it does not amplify the darkness of the work so much as kill the humor that has made ignoring that darkness possible. However, hope remains. It is simply not in the places where it is typically found. Take the Queen of the Underworld, Queen Jades, who is far from the maleficent and detached ruler that her title would suggest. She's not the devil, she's not even like her namesake, Hades, who is not evil, despite what Disney's terrible, awkward, embarrassing adaptation of Hercules would have you believe, but is rather mischievous and is morally ambiguous at best. Jades is not necessarily a good being, but she is a heartbroken mother who has lost her daughter and tasks Mario with finding her. Or consider the standard Mario villain, Bowser, who not only continues his streak of being absolutely hysterical in Paper Mario games, but also helps Mario defeat a much greater threat. Despite his flaws, Bowser also has no desire to see the end of all worlds. If Black and the Void triumph, then all his scheming and kidnapping will have been for naught. His character is treated with pathos and empathy, and he plays his part in preserving the world. Or consider Bleck's henchmen, who aside from Dimentio are not the one-dimensional villains they appear at first to be. While they are misguided, they genuinely care for the Count, and while they're shallow, they're far from bad people. Even the villain at the end of Chapter 5 is more sympathetic than he appears at first. While King Crocus is a narcissist, he is not a bad king to his subjects. He was mind-controlling Kragnons because they were dumping trash into the Florosapian water system. This trash drove Crocus's madness. While the environmental message here is rather heavy-handed, that can be forgiven by how it fits into the game's central idea of darkness being found in the light and vice versa. The game rejects the simple binary of good and evil. The town of Flopside is the diametric opposite to the game's starting area, Flipside, but although Flopside is a very austere and downbeat place, it is far from a city of darkness. The light emerging from the darkness juxtaposes the tragic, haunting story of Count Bleck, and eventually it prevails. The name Lumiere is derived from the French lumière, or light. In the original Japanese, his name is Rumieru, which is literally Lumiere when sounded out using the Japanese alphabet. Even here, there's the contrast of the light and the darkness. The victory of the light is not saccharine, rather it is richly earned, not only because the love between Bleck and Tippy, or rather, Timpani and Lumiere, is genuine and tender and integral to both characters, And not only because the tragedy of Count Bleck is richly and achingly and movingly defined, but also because the theme of light emerging from darkness and vice versa is so richly woven into the very shape and essence of the game. While the stories of Paper Mario and The Thousand-Year Door were rich and vibrant, they lacked the nuance and scale to be elevated to the level of true greatness. Despite their creativity, they boil down to defeating the villain and saving the day. Super Paper Mario is much more interesting. Black is introduced as this one-dimensional character, but the unfolding of his intricacies is gorgeously and elegantly executed. This is a being who has known love and loss and tragedy and suffering. Though his villainy is evident, he is the product of a bigoted and repressive environment. He does not long for absolute power or ill-gotten wealth. Instead, he merely wants to end his suffering. He's far from an egomaniac. Nintendo, despite its reputation for making games with simple narratives, has created some of the most interesting and thought-provoking antagonists in gaming. From Ganondorf, especially in his Wind Waker incarnation, to N and Lucamine in the Pokémon series. These are antagonists that mainstream blockbuster games that are intended to be more serious and mature would kill for. And Count Bleck deserves his place in the pantheon of those great Nintendo antagonists. He's the most fascinating character the Mario series has ever crafted, and he is the main reason this game works as well as it does and leaves such a monumental impact. So if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more dual-sided content. Also, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe, all that thoroughly poignant and luminous stuff. Adios, comrades!